The morning Esther came home to find a black car parked outside her building, she almost walked past it. She had been up since 5. Her feet were still sore from the double shift the night before, and the strap on her left shoe had started to cut into her heel, somewhere around the 3rd hour of standing. She was thinking about that. She was thinking about whether the pharmacy on Saint Laurent would still have the foam insoles she liked, and whether she had enough left on her card to buy them. She was not thinking about black cars, or men in suits, or what any of that might mean for a woman like her. But the man standing by the car was looking directly at her. She stopped. He stepped forward. "Excuse me. Are you Esther? Esther Mbui?" She shifted her bag on her shoulder. "Who's asking?" "We were sent by Mr. Beaulieu," he said. "He'd like to see you." Esther looked at the car, then back at the man. She had no idea who Théodore Beaulieu was. 3 weeks earlier, the world had been simpler, smaller. It fit inside the walls of Chez Marguerite, a Haitian restaurant on the east end of the city, where Esther had worked as a server for going on 2 years. The place smelled like thyme and fried plantain, and the particular kind of grease that soaked into your hair, no matter how carefully you tied it back. She didn't mind. She had learned not to mind a lot of things. She rented a room in a basement apartment on Belanga. The ceiling was low, and the radiator knocked all night in winter, and when it rained hard, water gathered in a brown ring near the bathroom door. Her landlord, Mr. Kowalski, had promised to look at it in October. It was now December. She sent money home every month, to her mother in Kinshasa, to her younger brother who was trying to finish secondary school. What was left she spent carefully. She kept a small notebook where she tracked every dollar. Groceries, transit pass, phone bill, the occasional coffee when she was tired enough that she truly needed it. She had been saving for a new winter coat. The one she wore had a zipper that stuck at the bottom and a lining that had torn away at the sleeve, so the cold came in from the inside. She was practical about it. She didn't complain. She had grown up watching her mother work 2 jobs and still find ways to laugh at the dinner table, and she had decided, somewhere along the way, that this was what dignity looked like. You kept going. You didn't make yourself small, but you didn't make yourself a burden either. The restaurant was busy, always. Esther moved quickly, the way you learn to move in a place where the tables turned every 40 minutes and the kitchen was always behind. She knew the regulars. She remembered who took their coffee with sugar and who didn't want to be asked twice. Customers liked her. Some of them asked for her section specifically. This was what Rosaline could not stand. Rosaline had worked at Chez Marguerite for 4 years before Esther arrived. She had been the one the regulars asked for, once. She was not a cruel person exactly, but she had a way of watching that felt like judgment, and a way of smiling that meant the opposite of warmth. She noticed everything Esther did. She counted the tips Esther received. She kept a record of small resentments the way some people keep receipts. Their boss, Madame Leclerc, was another matter. She was a compact woman in her 50s who wore her hair pressed and her opinions openly. She ran the restaurant the way a general runs a garrison, with efficiency and very little patience for sentiment. She was not kind to the staff, but she was fair in a technical sense. She paid on time. She didn't steal wages. She shouted when she was angry and forgot about it 10 minutes later. Esther had made her peace with Madame Leclerc. What she had not made her peace with was the cold. It was a Thursday, the kind of cold December afternoon that settles into your bones before noon, when an old man appeared at the door of the restaurant. He was thin, wearing a coat that had once been good quality but had grown tired at the elbows. He held the door open for a moment, as if checking whether he was allowed to come in. Then he stepped inside. He didn't sit down. He stood near the entrance, holding his hat in both hands, and looked toward the counter. Esther saw him first because she was clearing the table nearest to the door. She glanced up and caught his eyes. Pale brown, patient, a little uncertain, she gave him a small nod, the kind that says, "Someone will be with you." She finished clearing the table and turned toward the kitchen. By the time she came back out, Madame Leclerc had seen him. "What do you want?" Madame Leclerc said, not unkindly but not warmly either. The man said something quiet. Esther couldn't hear from where she stood, but she saw Madame Leclerc's expression shift. "This isn't a shelter," Madame Leclerc said. Her voice had gone flat. There are places for that. You need to go. The man nodded once, slowly. He put his hat back on. He looked at the floor for a moment, then at the room, and then he turned and went back out into the cold. Esther stood very still. The restaurant kept moving around her. Rosaline sailed past with a tray. The kitchen bell rang. A child at table 5 asked for more ketchup. Everything continued exactly as it had before, and nobody seemed to notice that a door had just closed on an old man who had asked for something to eat. She thought about it for the rest of the afternoon. She thought about it when she cashed out and stood at the back pulling on her torn coat. She thought about it on the bus home. There was a heaviness to it that she couldn't put down. The way he had held his hat, the way he hadn't argued. She had seen that specific patience before. She recognized it. It was the patience of someone who had been turned away enough times that they no longer expected anything different. She had been hungry before, in a way that was real and not dramatic. After she first arrived in Montreal, before she found steady work, there had been days when she stretched a bag of rice until it was gone, and then went to bed early because sleeping was easier than sitting with an empty stomach. She had not talked about those days much. She still didn't, but she remembered them clearly. The next morning she packed her lunch carefully. Rice, a piece of chicken, an orange, and she went to work. He was there again. Same spot near the door. Same hat. She went to the kitchen before Madame Leclerc saw him. She asked the cook, a quiet Haitian man named Gerald, if he could help her for a minute. She took the container she'd brought from home and asked him to heat it up. Then she wrapped it in a paper bag, slipped it under her arm, and went outside through the back. She found him around the corner, sitting on a low wall beside the building. "Bonjour," she said. He looked up. "Bonjour." She held out the bag. "I thought you might be hungry." He looked at the bag, then at her. "For me?" "Yes." "Why?" She considered the question seriously. "Because I have enough today," she said. "And it looks like maybe you don't." He took the bag slowly. He didn't open it right away. He held it in his lap and looked at her for a long moment as though he was trying to understand something. "Thank you," he said. His name, he told her, was Theodore. She told him hers was Esther. "You work here?" he asked, nodding toward the restaurant. "Yes, they know you're doing this?" She hesitated only for a second. "No," he nodded. He looked out at the street. "You could get in trouble," he said. It wasn't a warning exactly, more like an observation. "I've been in trouble before," she said. "I'll be fine." She went back inside. She was not fine, in the sense that what she had done sat in her chest all day. Not as guilt, but as something more alert, like she had crossed a small line and was now watching to see what was on the other side. Rosaline watched her too, with that measuring look. Esther kept moving. She smiled at table 6, took an order at table 2, refilled the bread basket. She did not look toward the back entrance. She went back the next day, and the day after that. She varied the food because she didn't want to give him the same thing twice. Sometimes rice, once a container of soup she'd made the night before, once 2 hard-boiled eggs and bread because she was running low and that was what she had. He always waited in the same spot. He always asked her how she was. He listened when she answered, which was unusual. Most people asked how you were and were already looking elsewhere before you finished speaking. One afternoon, she found him sitting with his eyes closed and his breathing shallow. She sat down beside him. "Theodore, are you all right?" "Cold got in," he said. "I'm a bit dizzy." She checked the time on her phone. She had 11 minutes left on her break. She looked at him again, the gray of his face, the way his hands were slightly wrong. She made a decision. She went back inside and found Gerald. "I need to step out for 20 minutes, she told him. "Can you cover table 3 if they ask for something?" He looked at her. "Madame Leclerc, I know. Please," he sighed. "Go." She helped Theodore to the clinic 2 streets over, walking slowly because he needed to stop twice. The nurse at the front desk looked at them over her glasses. Esther explained. They waited 35 minutes. A doctor came and said it was low blood sugar and mild exposure and asked when he had last eaten a real meal. Theodore looked at Esther when he said this, and she looked at her shoes. She paid for the prescription with the last of what was on her transit card. She would walk to work for the rest of the week. It was 15 minutes. She had done it before. She walked him back to the street where she usually found him, and made sure he was somewhere sheltered before she left. "You are a very strange person," he said. She almost laughed. "Why? You keep helping someone who cannot help you back." "I'm not helping you because I expect something," she said. "I'm helping you because you're here and so am I." He was quiet for a moment. "Go back to work," he said softly. "Before you lose your job too." She went. She was too late. She knew it before she even walked through the door, from the way the other servers looked at her. That particular combination of sympathy and relief that someone feels when the trouble lands on someone else. Rosaline was standing near the service station with her arms crossed and a careful expression on her face that meant she had already said whatever she'd needed to say. And it had landed where she intended. Madame Leclerc came out of the back before Esther could take off her coat. "Where were you?" "I needed to help someone. There was a man outside who—" "I don't need the story." Madame Leclerc held up one hand. "I need servers who are here when I need them, not when it's convenient for them. Madame, I've had complaints before. Taking food outside, leaving your station." She looked at Esther directly. "I gave you the benefit of the doubt. I should not have." Rosaline did not look at Esther. She looked at the wall, which was almost worse. Esther went home that afternoon without a job. She sat on the edge of her bed for a while. She thought about her mother's phone bill, and her brother's school fees, and the coat with the broken zipper, and the ring of water damage near the bathroom door that Mr. Kowalski was never going to fix. She pressed her palms to her knees. She breathed. She made rice for dinner. She set aside a small container. The next day she went to look for Theodore, even though there was no restaurant to come out of now. She found him in the usual spot. She gave him the food. He took it and looked at her face. "You lost the job," he said. "Not a question." "Yes." He closed his eyes briefly. "Because of me." "Because of me," she corrected. "I knew what I was doing." He said nothing for a long time. He looked at his hands. When he finally looked up, there was something in his expression that she couldn't quite read. Some interior calculation. Something serious and quiet turning over in him. "Esther," he said, "I'd like to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "Okay. If you had known from the beginning that helping me would cost you your job, would you have done it anyway?" She thought about it. Really thought, not just for the answer he might want. "Yes," she said, "I would have, but I would have been more careful about it." He looked at her for another long moment. Then he nodded, just once, as if something had been confirmed. "Thank you," he said, "for the food, every day." She smiled. "Take care of yourself, Theodore." She left to look for work. She found something at a grocery store on Beaubiang, part-time, minimum wage, which was not nothing. She picked up a shift cleaning offices 3 nights a week. She was tired in the particular way that comes not from any single long day, but from the accumulation of them. The weight of keeping things going without anyone seeing the effort. She sent a smaller amount home that month and called her mother to explain. Her mother said, "You are still sending. That is what matters." Esther held the phone against her shoulder for a moment after they hung up. She had not seen Theodore in over a week. She told herself this was fine. She did not have his number. She did not know where he slept. She hoped he was all right. She made herself stop checking the wall beside Chez Marguerite when she walked past on her way to the grocery store, which was a habit she broke slowly over several days. Then, one morning, a man in a dark coat knocked on the door of her building and asked for her by full name. She came down in her work clothes, confused, a cup of tea still in her hand. "Mrs. Mbouy," the man said. He was polite and direct in a way that suggested professional training. "Mr. Theodore Beaulieu would like to meet with you." "At your convenience, Theodore Beaulieu," she repeated. "Yes." He said, "You know him as Theodore." She thought of the wall outside Chez Marguerite, the hat, the bag of rice, the clinic. "Beaulieu," she said again. She knew that name. Everyone in this city knew that name. Beaulieu Group. The towers downtown with the dark glass. The foundation that funded the new wing at Saint-Justine Hospital. She had seen it in the news. "Is this a joke?" she asked. The man looked at her calmly. "No, Miss Mbouy." She went upstairs and changed her clothes. The car drove for 40 minutes. She watched the city change out the window, from her street with its dépanneurs and cash loan signs to the quieter avenues, lined with trees that people planted on purpose, and then through a gate and up a long driveway toward a house that was not a house the way her apartment was a house, but something closer to an institution, with wings and stone and tall windows that caught the December light. She was led inside. She sat in a room with high ceilings and waited. Theodore came in wearing clothes that fit, a good sweater, leather shoes. He was clean-shaved and carried himself differently. The slight stoop was gone, or diminished. He looked like himself, but in context, like a word you've only seen written down that you finally hear spoken aloud. "Esther," he said. "Theodore Beaulieu," she said back, and she made it sound exactly like what it was, a question she was still answering. He sat across from her. He folded his hands. He did not offer excuses right away, which she respected. "I need to explain myself," he said. "Yes, I've been doing this for 3 months," he said, walking, visiting different parts of the city, presenting as not who I am. He paused. "I'm 71. I had a health episode in September. It changed some things for me, the way I think about what I leave behind." She waited. "My son, Mathieu, is 34. He has been working in the company for 6 years. He is competent. He is also, I say this with love, someone who has spent his whole life inside a certain kind of world. I worry about the person he will become when I am no longer here to tell him when he's wrong." He looked at her steadily. "I was not looking for someone to hand him to. I was trying to understand what kind of people still exist. Whether there are still people who help because they are simply built that way, not for recognition, not for what comes after." Esther said nothing. "I found 3, he said, in 3 months. You were the 3rd. What happened to the other 2? Something crossed his face that she couldn't categorize. They were kind. They're being helped in other ways. But, he shook his head slightly, you are different, not because you did more, because of why you did it, and how you answered just now when I asked." He paused. "I lost my job, you said, and then I would have done it anyway, but I would have been more careful. That is a person who learns. That is a person who does not perform goodness. They practice it." She looked at her hands for a moment, then at him. "What do you want from me, Theodore? I want to offer you a position, a real one, in the foundation. We work on housing access and employment support, things I think you understand from the inside, not from a policy document." He paused. "And I want to introduce you to Mathieu, not with any obligation, not as an arrangement, simply because I think the world is better when people like you are in the room." Esther was quiet for a long time. "I'm not educated," she said. "Not formally, not beyond what I came here with. I know. That's not what I'm talking about. I don't speak the way the people in your world speak. You speak clearly and honestly, which is rarer." She looked at the window. The light outside was the flat white of a Montreal winter afternoon, and the garden was bare and very still. "I'll need to think about it," she said. "Of course." She stood up. He walked her back toward the entrance. At the door she stopped and turned. "The coat you were wearing," she said, "the worn one." He looked at her. "It wasn't real, was it?" "The coat." He smiled, just slightly. "The cold was real," he said. She nodded once. Then she walked back to the car. She thought about it for 3 days. She called her mother, not to ask for advice, but to hear her voice. She walked her usual route to the grocery store. She sat in her room with the low ceiling, and the knocked radiator and the brown ring near the bathroom door, and she made herself think honestly about what she was afraid of, and whether those fears were reasonable ones. On the 3rd day she called the number on the card. Theodore's assistant had left. "I'd like to accept," she said, "the position, and I'd like to meet your son." There was a pause. Then, "He's already asked about you, twice." She laughed at that, a small surprised sound, the kind that comes before you've decided to. She gave her notice at the grocery store. She called the office cleaning company and told them it was her last week. She laid her torn coat on the bed and looked at it for a moment, then folded it carefully and put it in a bag for the donation bin on the corner. On her first day at the foundation, she arrived early. She didn't know where anything was, or how the phones worked, or which of the 3 Isabels in the office she'd be working with most closely. She stood in the lobby with her good shoes and her good coat. New, a deep burgundy, marked down at the end of season sale, zipper perfect, and she felt the particular mix of nervous and ready that means you're doing the right thing. A man came through the glass doors and stopped when he saw her. Tall, dark coat. He had his father's eyes. "You must be Esther," he said. "Matthew," she said back. He extended a hand. She shook it. Neither of them said anything for a moment. "My father talks about you," he said finally. "He said you were the kind of person who would give someone your lunch and then apologize for not making it better." She thought of Gerald in the kitchen heating up her container of rice. She thought of the wall outside Chez Marguerite. She thought of Rosaline's careful non-expression and Madame Leclerc's raised hand and Théodore holding the paper bag in both of his and asking quietly why. "He talks too much," she said. Mathieu smiled. It was the real kind. "Come on," he said. "I'll show you where everything is." She followed him through the doors, and behind her the city went on as it always had, cold and complicated, and full of ordinary mornings that sometimes, without warning, turn into something else entirely.